Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, race fans, sim fans, RC fans, Racing 393. So the video you're about to watch is regarding my RC10GT. I purchased this gearbox, which was advertised as a stealth gearbox. Upon research, I haven't really found what that means, to be honest. I've seen RC10s and they have a stealth gearbox. Stealth doesn't really mean much to me. Quiet, a quiet gearbox. Stealth. I don't know if people can. If you know what it is, can you let me know somehow? I can be contacted many different ways. Ideally, via this video. But anyway, this was advertised as a stealth gearbox for an RC10GT, and this is the gearbox I rebuilt. The video goes through the processes of what I've done, so you can watch that. And the rest of the video will be me installing the gearbox into my RC10, which you can just see here. That's the front wheel. And we'll be comparing the two gearboxes when I've removed the one that's coming out. I've got numerous engines in various states of build. Whether or not I change the engine that's in the car, I don't know. We'll see as I get into it. It's not a particularly complex job, but it's a lot easier. The motor has to come out for just to ease of access. I've got a couple of carbon fibre standoffs to fit as well, which again, it's not difficult, it's just got to get around to doing them. And we're going to remove the gearbox rear, and I think the rear, like, I'm not sure actually how that would come off. I'm going to take the motor out, like I said, and I don't think I've got to take much else off. But as I get into it, I will sort of show you via the film. I'm not going to film each and every stage. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to start taking the car apart. So I shall see you shortly. Depressing. I'm ill. Depressing. Could it get any worse? Well, not really. When you dig your RC10GT out for some more work. Right. So I've been quite busy behind the scenes with my RC10GT. As it stands, I haven't got anything on the car to show you yet, on the car. But what I have got is a few bits here I would like to quickly go over with you to give you my plans. So, if you remember, a while ago, I had a completely genuine 0.15 nitro engine for the RC10GT. It did have a back plate missing and a pull start, but it was rebuilt and it was, what I think, in pretty good condition, to be honest. So I bought another motor. It wasn't the one, it's not the one you see there. It's actually this one. So the one on the left is an OS, you know, a standard one that came with the kit. Although the one in the car does look ever so slightly different, which I've only just noticed. It's got different fins on it. But these are the same. Let's show you these first. So I bought this one mainly for the spares. It's got a good compression from what I can gather, but it's got everything on it that you need. This is the one I bought ages and ages ago, looking for the spares. So it doesn't really matter, I could have just kept that one and kept this as spares, but I have stripped that one down. Now, the engine that's in it is a standard engine. Though those fins look a lot bigger. So I'm guessing it's a different spec engine, which I've only just noticed. But anyway, we're gonna do some work. We're gonna get, the ultimate plan is to get this, or one of these, but probably that one, into the car and try it out. I believe that's one of the original motors that came with the RC10GT. In the meantime, I also purchased a stealth gearbox. I believe it's a stealth gearbox for the RC10GT. I'm going to clean it up. I've stripped it down. I'm going to put, I don't know whether to put new bearings in, which I have here, specifically for the RC10GT, because the ones that came out were very good. This is the ball diff that came out. It feels alright, but I've got a different one here. I've got a Spur gear, which is a steel Spur gear, or diff gear I should say, not Spur gear, a steel diff gear. And then I also got a rebuild kit. So I'm in two minds whether to completely rebuild it, use the innards of that one with that diff gear. I don't know yet. But yeah, so the plan is now, I don't think there's much difference. I actually, if somebody can tell me what this, because I've only heard of the stealth gearbox via the RC10, the electric off-road buggy. I must admit, I'm not aware. I mean, I'm hoping maybe this doesn't even fit. I mean, maybe it's wrong. It looks right. I've looked at another gearbox case and it looks as it should from an RC10GT point of view. But I've not heard of the RC10GT having a stealth gearbox. And even if it had, what is it? What is the difference? Anyway, we're gonna get it cleaned up and we'll go from there. So I'll leave that for a while, probably about 10 minutes. Cleaner. The bearings are okay actually, so I'll probably use the original bearings. This is that cream coloured off-white, which is years old, so that will only get so clean. And that's the inside of the gearbox anyways, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's in good condition. So I'm just going to sort of dry assemble it with a little bit of bearing oil, which I've got there. Just to sort of put it back together, just to make sure it's on the original, you know, diff, that it's actually okay. And I'll what I'll do then is I will put the I'll strip the diff down as a separate job and then install it. There we go. So I've just pinned it together with a couple of bolts. You can see it's, you know, before I took it apart, it was smooth anyway, to be honest. There's no residual, well there is. I haven't put any extra oil in there or grease or anything. It's just what was perhaps on the gears. I didn't put the gears through the cleaner. I'll just wipe those down. But there's yeah, that's super smooth. And the diff, this is the original diff. It's a very, very smooth ball diff with just the right amount of give. There's some resistance there, but when you turn, they turn both, so it doesn't feel as loose as what it could be. I'm still yet to find out what the stealth gearbox is. I've got a feeling it's something to do with something on here. But I'm going to keep it as is. You know, there's a slipper clutch that goes on here, and I'll use the original one that I've got on the kit. I've got plenty of spares of them, and on here there's the brake disc thing. So yeah, it won't make any difference. It's just something different to use on an old vintage nitro. So anyway, that's what I'm up to. I'm gonna now strip the diff and rebuild it with the steel diff gear. I don't know what they're called, diff gears. That's because I'm ill. My brain definitely isn't in gear today. So I'm gonna make it. I've got to take this off and then take it apart and put it back together. There's a pin that goes through there as well, which a dowel pin, which I knocked out. There is a little bit of end float there in that shaft. So when it's in, it sort of stays more out rather than in. But there we go. So yes, so far so good, bit by bit. So I'm going to now strip the diff, rebuild it, put it back in, grease it up, and then put the at least the gearbox back together for its sort of final assembly, and then it will be a case of then transferring all that to the car. So yeah, okay, leave that with me. Okay, so right, so this is the stealth gearbox. I'm actually, to be quite honest with you, I don't even know what a stealth gearbox is. It was sold as a stealth gearbox, and this sort of cream coloured housing. I mean, I've only really seen that in an RC10 rather than an RC10GT, which is what this is for. I've taken it apart and it's standard, it feels right. I haven't taken the diff apart yet, but everything else feels fine. It's only bolted in temporarily at the moment. So in theory, I've got to take the diff out and put this steel hardened aluminium gear diff. I'm still ill, by the way. So that should be able to go in, even if I just replace the gear in there with this one. I've also got an MIP Super Diff, a rebuild kit. It says all team associated 1/10 vehicles. I don't even know. I don't know. Maybe that's something to do with this. I'll have to see. I mean, looking at these, looking at those sort of ball bearings there, I've got a feeling it might not actually be suitable for this. It might even be the slipper diff, the slipper clutch, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, I'm gonna get this apart. Just undo there's no grease other than what was residue in there anyway. And then I'm gonna take this diff apart. It actually feels okay. This is the thing. It feels really smooth, but you know, I bought this other diff, so I might as well put it in there. You can see I'm still coughing, and we'll go from there. So let me just skip to stripping that diff down. So there we have it. That took way longer than it should have done. Partly my ignorance, I must admit. It's been a number of years since I've taken a gearbox apart of an RC10GT. They're not difficult. I mean, just if you've not done it, you tend to overlook some really obvious things. Now, this is, like I say, this was sold, and I purchased this as advertised, a stealth gearbox. I've no idea what the stealth bit means. I've got a funny feeling, if anything, it's to do with the output shaft here and what goes on it. what connects, the spur gear, the slipper clutch and spur gear assembly to the motor or the engine clutch bell stroke pinion. Don't know, because there's nothing inside here that points to stealth that I'm aware of. I mean, it is quiet, I'll give it that, but the other one, to be honest, my other gearboxes I think were like that. It's only a ball diff. It's got the aluminium, hardened aluminium main gear in there. I've kept the same bearings, same output shaft here and that gear, and the same sort of middle gear which is in between the two. I put a rebuild kit which was by MIP in here. The one that came out, the diff that came out, and this one, this does feel a lot sort of smoother, but it is new, isn't it? So and I've just done it up enough so that it's not tight. So the main reason I had with this, a little bit of ignorance, and just it took ages. So it wasn't, I mean, getting this apart is dead easy. Taking this out, yeah, it falls out. But getting this apart, what I overlooked, you can't really see it, but in there, below that little O-ring, there's a collar, if you like, that goes in, that screws together. The screw goes in from this side and goes all the way through, and you do it up from here. Well, I mean, in there's just a cap that covers the bolt. The problem is the cap is like a plastic colour like this, and the insert, the threaded insert, if you like, is the same colour, but it looked like a cap. I should have looked it up, but I didn't. And trying to get that off, I didn't realise it's screwed together. I thought it was a cap, and then you unscrew it from that end. I couldn't quite see the bolt there on the head. Once I took the cap off on this side, I couldn't see whether it was a bolt head. It's only a small Allen bolt head, a long thin Allen bolt head, and it's a team associated sized Allen key that needed for it, which I've got. So it's all a bit so that took ages to figure that out in my head. I should have looked it up. If I looked online, it would have been all right, but I didn't do that. I did towards the end, because trying to get it out, we have some cuttage, and that really hurt. So it took ages and ages, but had I looked properly, it would have been literally, to take that apart, in this case, 5 minutes. So we live and learn. The other thing I found quite difficult was when you put the Allen bolt in, it goes in. What's on the end is a what do they call that? A thrust washer. Basically, what was it like? A ball diff, for want of a better description. So ball bearings sandwiched between a washer and another washer with a groove in it where the ball bearings run round. So when you do that bolt up, it doesn't just tighten up forever. It's sort of got some preload. You can put some preload on the actual diff in here. Of course, yeah, I understood that, but it's so minuscule, tiny things you got to do, and I couldn't see it properly. Even had my glasses on, and it was almost impossible. You put grease on it, and the little ball bearings kept coming out, and I was thinking, you got to kind of put it together in such a way so it doesn't all fall apart, and then you got to thread it through to this and get that through without knocking all the ball bearings and they're sticking to the inside. Anyway, that I found tricky. There might be an easy way of doing it, but yeah, we're here now. So this is what we're up to. Yeah, it's super smooth. Yeah, I'm pleased with the way that went together now, finally. So, next stage is to assemble the brake linkage up on here. and then I've got to take the one off the running car, the RC10GT. Got to take all that off. Shouldn't be too difficult. So disassemble the rear end pretty much, clean it up, take some bits off of that standard gearbox, if you like. I say standard, it's probably the same, just black. And then reassemble it up and put it back in the chassis. That's a bit of a long-winded one, but that's the next stage. And then it depends on which motor I use. I've got like three standard motors with this, so they're all going to be much the same, aren't they? But I think for the ease, I'll probably use the same engine that's already in the car because it works. And then we'll get it started. It's winter now in the UK, so we'll get in that way. I'm not sure when we'll get it out running, but the next part of the video is a longer version, longer effort, if I'm honest, because that's going to be the stripping the buggy down the truck, stripping it down at the back, and then putting this on and putting all the bits that go on it. I've also got another couple of bits for this. I've got some carbon fibre shock standoffs, and there's a carbon fibre plate that goes over here, I think, and goes back onto a mount. Yeah, so I've got a couple of new bits for that, and there's a few bits and pieces to add on to the truck when I'm building it. But anyway, we'll get to that in the next, well, not the next, I need to say the next video. No, this will be a continuation. So onwards and upwards. Let's get this gearbox reassembled. So there's the engine out, the standard OS 0.15 RC10GT. It's actually running a 20-tooth pinion, so a slightly larger pinion than what would be standard. Yeah, so it come out nice and easy. Just going to dismantle the rear end of the car now. I'm just going to. There's a certain amount that's got to come off. It hasn't all got to come off. I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, so it's just a couple of bolts. The brake linkage, which I'm going to use the same brake linkage and spur gear as what's already on the car. Now, obviously the car does have a slipper clutch, and I've got a new spring for the slipper clutch. It came with the kit when I sort of rebuilt. You know, in this, I used the hyphenated stealth gearbox, which looks exactly the same as what's on the car, but different colour. The rebuild kit also comes with a slipper clutch spring that tensions the slipper clutch. You know, so yeah. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. I'm going to dismantle this part of the car. I'll do it on camera, obviously, and then I'll be back once I've got the bit in my hand that looks almost the same as that. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. I've just removed the slipper clutch, and you can see that I've put these in the order in which they came off, so I don't have to. I've taken a picture as well. The slipper clutch is off, which you can see there in front of you, and you can see that the gearbox just needs. I just need to remove the brake bracket, and that should come off, and it can be immediately sort of replaced and put onto the new gearbox. I'll then show you the gearboxes side by side, and then we can go from there. Two gearboxes side by side. One on the left is stealth gearbox, if that's a thing, and the one on the right is what came out. Exactly the same gearboxes. They do feel different. This one does, and again, that one's been rebuilt. The new main gear, aluminium gear, and original bearings, but the ball diff's been rebuilt. So this one has got, in fact, if anything, it's a bit of play here. It feels rather dry, if I'm honest. It could probably done with some oil in there, and that's a bit dry. It feels dry. This one, much smoother. A much smoother ball diff. A bit more resistance here, but super smooth. That's super free, but it feels dry. That's got no play in those output shafts where this one has. So take it what you will. That's the they are the same. One's better than the other because it's been rebuilt. Apart from that, I'm going to take the pin out of here. I've got one anyway that came out of this one, but I might try and remove this one. I don't suppose I have to do that actually. Either way, I'm going to put the pin in, and then I'm going to reassemble the brake here. So that'll be reassembled, put back on. The spur gear, sorry, the slipper diff. What's that called? A slipper clutch. That'll be put back on. I put a new spring on. I think I got a new nut as well. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. I've also got I've got to change and put a new one of these on. I have a carbon fibre one of these, which means I might have to use it as a template and drill. I've got to drill this post, this standoff post for the body shell, but it's just go straight on. Yeah. So that was a lot easier than actually getting this apart. Taking that apart was a bitch, only because of my ignorance. But ultimately, the only thing I found wrong with the car was, well, there's no point me showing you, as in you can see it, but this is a stainless steel. It was a fixing point for here, but it's rounded off. You probably can't see that very well, but anyway, that's fucked. Anyway, so we're going to get that, replace that. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Let's get this reassembled. Gearbox is in. I should say here the stealth gearbox, but what is that? Hence the thumbnail. Yeah, I mean it feels better than the one that was in there, but then if I'd have like I said, if I'd have rebuilt the one that was in there, it would be black and matching. That's the only downside. I thought this is something special, but I don't think it is. I think the early RC10GTs, a little bit like the RC10s, had this kind of off-white plastics. But anyway, let's get the engine in. Everything all back together. It's not obviously, I'm not going to fire it up or anything like that. I just want to get it all back so it's I can show you the end result. When it's all back together, that was interesting. I mean, overall it hasn't taken that long. It's just that I've spread out over a few days, actually a few weeks. In between all that, I've been ill, so haven't been able to do it, and I haven't had time either. So, to summarise, I've purchased what I thought, and I still don't know, is a stealth gearbox for an RC10GT. Upon dismantling, and from what I found out, there's no difference between the gearbox housing and gears that came off as such as to those that went back on. I mean, it's exactly the same as this, which I was expecting, and I wasn't really expecting to be a lot different. If anything, this one could have done with the rebuild, the rebuild kit. But it's in there now. It feels okay. I'll just show you. Can't see it anyway. It's down there. I believe all the differences between this one and the one that I took out the car is the plastics, and I put the hardened aluminium main gear in the housing. So not a lot of difference. I've also, if you look there, that's a carbon fibre top gearbox mount, and I've also added carbon fibre. I don't know if you can see them down there, but probably not. But the carbon fibre rear shock standoffs that fix to the plastic arms at the bottom. So there is still a little bit of flex, but nowhere near as much. So it's much stiffer. Now, like anything, you know what it's like. You take something apart and put it back together exactly the same. You end up with issues. More issues. Now the problem with this one, nothing unusual. It would happen anyway. So when you take the motor out, the meshing can be quite tricky. Now, I'm just going to turn the car around. So I've got a 20, I showed you this, a 20 tooth clutch bell and a 65 tooth spur gear. The problem is I need to get a smaller spur, which I think I've got somewhere. And I think you can get 64, 63. I'm pretty sure I've seen those on the internet. When I was using this one last time, it did mesh. It meshed okay, but it did chafer, mark, grind. I'm trying to think of a word. Anyway, it damaged a little bit of the spur gear last time I used this. It's probably my meshing here, because this is a rather large clutch bell. It's 20 teeth. I think the one standard that comes off could be something like 17 or 18, even 16. I've got it somewhere, but anyway, yeah, so it's very, very tightly meshed. I haven't got any more room left on the engine mount to slide. So if I have a slightly smaller spur gear, I'll be able to sort of tidy up the mesh. So upon changing the engine, the mesh isn't quite right and it clicks a little bit. It's definitely not the gearbox, because I tested the gearbox before it went on. It's perfect. Nothing else has changed. There's a few housekeeping things I will do before I take it out, and it is winter here in the UK, although it doesn't feel like it with the temperature. It is unusually mild. However, this is now completed. So we had the upgrades that I put on. They all seem to work. I'd like to know your comments on what is a stealth gearbox. I don't think it is. It's just an old gearbox. Off-colour white plastics. Exactly the same inside and out. Maybe the stealth part is to do with the spur gear, because I have seen some pictures of these RC10 GTs, and the spur gear isn't the same. It's a completely different shape, like it's almost a different design of slipper clutch. This has got a slipper clutch in it. It's got a friction disc behind there, and you do that nut up as tight as you need. I did use the old spring in the end because the new spring didn't go over the shaft. Don't know why that is. Well, I know why it is, but it's not for this car. But so yeah, rebuilt what I can. It's still fairly standard, the running gear. I've got some other 0.15 engines. I've got one that's fairly new actually, so I might, once I've got this gearing set out and got this running and had a go, I will probably be quite keen to try one of the other engines. Yeah, so I'm left with what is a standard and rather good condition gearbox. It just needs, I left the dowel in there anyway, the original dowel, but there's a bit of play there. But ultimately, it's as good as new. It's really good condition. With a strip down and I've got some bearings and rebuild it, it'll be exactly what's in there. So maybe that's a stealth gearbox. Who knows? I'll tell you something. I've only got to put a word in front of it, and my eyes will find it on eBay, and I'll end up buying it. So anyway, stealth or not stealth, it's done. Right, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it wasn't too long, and I shall see you very soon for some more videos on my RC. Be nice to have some feedback on my questions on this one. Thank you very much. The only person that actually would know, before I sort of shut down, is if he watches this, I don't know, is the bug. He's a font of all knowledge when it comes to RC10GTs. I've seen all his videos. If I think of it, whilst I'm editing, I will put a link in the description of his videos or his channel. He's my go-to info. If I want to find something out, usually the bug will have it, so maybe he'll know. Anyway, that's it. We're done. Thanks for watching, and see you soon. Bye for now.